Americans with severe mental illness are 3 times more likely to be in jail or prison than in a psychiatric hospital, as according to a report released last year. Some even say America's jails and prisons have become, once again, mental hospitals. Joining us now is Dr. John Paitakes, criminal justice expert and Seton Hall University professor. And we thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to first ask you a couple questions about why have we seen such an increase in the past couple of years in the mentally ill being put into jails and prisons?
Yeah, there's a combination of factors, Mia. A lot of the state correction mental health psychiatric institutions closed down, and as a result they put people on outpatient basis with medication. Now that was okay for a certain percentage of people, but others, if they got in trouble, the first person you come in contact with if you break the law would be a police officer who's not a psychologist. You're arrested and you're placed in jail if you can't make bail. So that's one reason.
Now this is all also because of the economy. They've closed down a lot of these places because of the economy?
Well, the economy, and if people are unemployed, produces stress. Stress, you know, 1 out of 5 people in this country have some mental health issue, okay? Now, add to that also the returning veterans from several of the wars that we've had in the last couple of years with stress disorders or whatever. So it's a combination of all those factors, and the jails and the prisons end up housing these people initially until perhaps a complete evaluation, and they can be moved to some other facility.
And the recession has also created a lot of depression in folks as well, and a lot of instability. We've seen a lot more crime that has been attributed as well.
In many cases, that's another factor, yes.
So we're seeing this now. Why is this becoming such a public health issue now?
Well, you know, public safety is everybody's major concern or whatever. So, and the cost of medication, especially for psychiatric issues or certain prescriptions that they need, and people from the lower income strata usually don't have the best insurance or whatever, so they may not be taking the medication. If they're in jail or prison, they will get medication and treatment. They have that right according to, you know, Supreme Court rulings that they must be taken care of both medically and psychologically.
Now that actually, in California, there was a case where the inmates actually sued.
Right.
Tell me about that
and
how that is affecting things. There's something like 30,000 inmates that are going to be released?
Well, not necessarily, but they have to be transferred. It was about 10 years ago. The case was Platt versus Brown. A number of inmates got together, and because of what they considered inhumane conditions in the prison, and one of the criteria was that they weren't getting appropriate psychological treatment, they filed a suit. They won the suit. California was under a direction to reduce their prison population by 30,000 by, I believe, next year. All right, so they're looking at a host of different alternatives, whether they're going to change some parole laws, releasing senior citizens, perhaps buying space from other state prisons and other, you know, states that are underpopulated. So that can be the end result, you know.
So potentially, if we don't find a solution, we are looking at possibly prisoners being released to accommodate because of this influx in mentally ill going into the prisons?
Not necessarily. Now, of course, it depends on the state and the administration, the correction administration in that particular area. But there are some other alternatives.
Let's talk about those alternatives.
Yeah. One of them is more diversionary programs. So in other words, if somebody's arrested on the street and we can assess right away that they have a mental health issue, they may be diverted to some center for counseling and treatment and medication if it's not that serious of an offense. If it's a more serious offense, yes, you do have to come under the correctional umbrella, and let's have a special part of the jail or the prison for these inmates, and some jails and prisons do. Others have a whole separate facility for them, all right? And the third alternative is mental health courts is becoming more popular in a lot of states. They're fashioned after the drug courts, where you have one judge handling those type of cases. They divert them to intense counseling with a probation officer, outpatient treatment, reporting back to the court every week. If that works, then they can be handled under supervision in the community. If it doesn't work, then they'll be referred to an inpatient psychiatric hospital.
Well, what happens when they come off the or when they leave potentially the prisons and the jails? Are they still on their medications? Who monitors that?
Well, that's a good question. If they serve their whole time in prison, they come out without parole, so they're on their own, okay? So if they were getting medication in prison, now it's up to them on the outside to get it. Now, if they don't have insurance and a doctor that's going to prescribe that or whatever, then most likely they're not going to take the medication, and so there we have recidivism, repeat offenders, okay? Those who are on parole, the parole officer can help them perhaps get some social services for it, but half the population comes comes out just after serving their sentence without any follow-up in the community.
It's still amazing when you say 1 in 5 people suffers from some sort of...
Yeah, I mean, some more severe than others, but
still, it's an
those are the
alarming
numbers.
statistic when you hear
Yes.
that. Well, thank you so much for your insights on this, Dr. John Paitakes from Seton Hall University. Always a pleasure to see you.
Oh, thank you, Mia.
All right.